Now, talk to me as a young kid. I mean, what was it like being the son of Anthony Sr.?
Well, in the beginning, I mean, when I was a young
kid, what do you
kid,
remember? What's your earliest memory? Do you have?
My earliest memory is that when I was a little kid, I would say probably like 1960, 61, my father had bought a new Thunderbird car, and he used to leave it outside my house with the door open, and my brother and I would go in the car in the morning and play taxi, and I would be the driver, and my brother would sit in the back seat, and I would make out I was a taxi cab, and we would play taxi. And now you're talking, I was 6 years old at the time, 6, 7 years old. My brother was 4, 5. And I remember one morning, I was in the car, and all of a sudden I looked, and the street got blocked off by cars. And then I saw guys running down the block with shotguns, and they surrounded the car. Wow. And they asked me, and I got scared, and they asked me if my father was home, and I started crying. And I go, yeah, my father's upstairs. It was the FBI. And they ran up in my house. It was on 87th Street. It was when when we first had moved into Ozone Park from East New York. We moved into Ozone Park. And they ran up, they stormed my house at the time, and I lived on the second floor, and they ran up the stairs. And I remember them arresting my father. But I didn't really understand what was going on. I was just very scared. My brother was crying. I was crying. My mother was upset. My sister was an infant. So it was it was chaotic. You know, FBI agents all over the street. They had the block blocked off. And I remember them taking my father out in handcuffs. And it was over an income tax. He got locked up for income tax evasion. That was the charge. I didn't know it at the time. I found out later.
They pulled a Capone on him, huh?
Yeah, they pulled a Capone on him, and he wound up taking a plea, and he had to pay back a lot of money. And through the years, he made a deal with them, and he paid all the money, back taxes back. They kept the car, they confiscated the car. So those are my early memories, and at the time, I knew that wasn't going on in my friends' houses or my cousins' houses. So, but I really still didn't understand what was going on. But I knew there was something different, because I would ask my father. I would have to go to school, and they would want to know what my father did for a living. And he would tell me that he worked in a dry cleaners because he owned a dry cleaners with some guy. And he was on the books there for years. He was on the books at this dry cleaner. And I knew in my heart that really wasn't true. But I would go to school and I would say that anyway, that my father worked in a dry cleaners. But I knew that it wasn't true because there was always a lot of guys in and out of my house in suits and ties, and my father would take me with him on Saturdays to his bar, and it would be crowded, and people would treat me different. They would stick money in my pocket, and and I always felt it impressed me at a young age. It really did impress me. That's the best way I could say it. It impressed me at a young age, but I still didn't know what was going on. But when I truly found out who he was and what was going on was through the older kids in my neighborhood. Because as I got older and I started hanging around in the neighborhood, in the schoolyard, at the pizzeria, I remember I would go up to the pizzeria. There was a pizzeria on 101st Avenue, and I would go there, and there would be older kids there, and they would and I would hear them point to me and go, "That's Fat Andy's son. That's Fat Andy's son." And they would point, and I would hear that. And, it sort of filled me with a little pride at the time, to be honest with you. And that's how I started to find out what was going on with him through other people, through the neighborhood. And then he would take me with him. And when he knew I was running around the other neighborhoods, he would take me with him. And he took me, that's when I first met John Gotti. I was about 12 or 13, and I was running around the neighborhood, and he took me to John's club, and he started taking me to all these wise guy clubs and introducing me to them so they would know I was his son, so they wouldn't beat me up.
Do you know what age you were? What age were you around that time?
I was probably around 12 or 13 when that was going on, when I started running around the neighborhood, and he started introducing me to people too. And that's when I sort of figured out what was going on, but I really didn't know what a wise guy was, what a mob guy was. And then I found out through the neighborhood. And then my kid brother was playing baseball at the time. He was a very good athlete, and my father never missed a ball game. My father went to every Little League game, and my father had gotten arrested, and it was on the front page of the Daily News. And my brother saw it, and my brother was a kid, and my brother asked me if it was true. And I said, yeah, it's true. At that point, I knew what was going on, and I said, yeah, it's true. And my father called me, and I went upstairs, and he asked me if my brother was okay now that he knows. does he still want me to go to the baseball game? And I said, I don't know, go ask him. So my father went downstairs into the basement, and he asked my brother, he says, because my brother had a game that night, and he asked my brother, do you still want me to come to the ball game with you? And my brother said, of course I do. Yeah, I do. And we went to the ball game. And it's funny because nobody knew who my father was at the time. You know, the other fathers of the kids on the team, nobody knew. And now they all knew because it was on the front page of the Daily News. And we went to the game that night. And, oh, Andy, we didn't know. And everybody was up his ass. And the wind-up is he got a couple of their sons in the Carpenters Union and the Laborers Union. You know, throughout the years, they all asked him for favors. And he started helping a couple of them because he liked a few of them. And that's sort of how it started for me, running around and learning what was going on.
So that's probably like for you was the point where you really started to realize, okay, I mean, it's on the freaking paper, right? I mean, you're not a reader,
yeah, of course. Yeah, that's when I knew. And I always knew he was treated special. You know, he was always treated well. People feared him. People respected him. And then when I was, but I never knew about the violence part. I never knew, you know, I didn't know anything about any violence that he perpetrated or anything like that. I saw him once get violent with a car salesman, and he went to buy a new car, and I was with him, and I don't know, he said something, and the guy sort of made like a joke out of it, and he grabbed the guy by the tie and slid him across his desk, and that was a little bit. And then when I was 16, and I got
those fucking car salesmen, huh?
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah, yeah, and then I had I went to this high school in Richmond Hill, and I had gotten in trouble, and the principal, the dean, I'll never forget his name either. His name was Mr. Stockfeather. He was this big German guy, and he told me that he wanted my father to come up to school, not my mother. And I told him, listen, you don't want my father to come up here. He goes, no, I want your father to come up here. So I went home and I told my father, listen, Mr. Stockfeather wants to see you. You need to come up to the school tomorrow. So he wasn't really happy about that, but he came. And back then, you weren't allowed to wear T-shirts to school, but we were just starting to start wearing jeans. It was that generation where we were trying to change the dress code. So I happened to walk into his office with a T-shirt on, and he grabbed me in front of my father, and he threw me up against the wall. And I don't need to tell you what happened. My father, like, my father jumped up and grabbed him and hit him and started choking him, and I had to jump on my father, and my father was screaming at him, don't you ever hit my son, I'll kill you. And he was choking him, and it was just a whole big scene. And I wound up getting suspended, and I was 16 at the time, so I wound up getting suspended. And I remember sitting in my father stopped talking to me because he didn't really want me in the street. And I got suspended, and I called up my uncle, and my uncle came over, my father's older brother, and my uncle told my father, what are you going to do? He's like us. So my father asked me what I wanted to do. I wanted to go work on construction, and I said, no, I definitely don't want to work on construction. And he said, you want to work for me? And I said, yeah. And he put me to work. He put me to work in a blackjack game. I was 16 years old.